And this month, we are going to send a large supply of other food products to Ouagadougou. We appreciate the support from Burkina Faso and many international platforms, including...
Something massive is happening behind the scenes, and the West is starting to panic. In a move that's sending shockwaves through intelligence circles and diplomatic offices alike, Burkina Faso's bold young leader, Ibrahim Traore, has stepped further into the global spotlight, this time hand in hand with none other than Vladimir Putin. What began as whispers of new military alliances and covert operations is now exploding into full view, a strategic master plan that's threatening to upend the balance of global power. From mineral-rich West Africa to the icy corridors of the Kremlin, this isn't just about resources or politics. It's about influence, sovereignty, and the rise of a new world order that directly challenges Western dominance. But what's the real agenda behind this unexpected alliance? Why is Traoré, a 36-year-old revolutionary leader, at the center of a geopolitical tug-of-war between East and West? And why are NATO analysts and Western diplomats reportedly scrambling behind closed doors to contain the fallout? In this deep dive exposé, we unravel the layers of Putin and Traoré's growing partnership, the economic and military deals reshaping Africa's allegiance, and the silent battle for control that's happening right under our noses. Get ready, because this story isn't just global politics. It's the front line of a rapidly shifting world where new powers are rising, old empires are fracturing, and the West is finally feeling the heat. The rise of Ibrahim Traore, Africa's new leader on the global stage. Ibrahim Traore's rapid ascent to power in Burkina Faso has sent shockwaves through Western capitals. At just 34 years old, Traore seized control in a military coup, but this wasn't just another regime change. It marked a clear rejection of Western influence and a dramatic turn towards new alliances. Traore has become the symbolic leader of a new African resistance, pushing back against decades of colonial legacy and foreign intervention. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso has expelled French troops, shut down Western military operations, and aligned itself more openly with Russia. This isn't just about Burkina Faso, it's about a continent-wide shift. Traore's rise reflects a growing mood in West Africa, where leaders, especially those backed by military regimes, are no longer looking to Paris, Brussels, or Washington for support. Instead, they're turning to Moscow. And Vladimir Putin has welcomed this shift with open arms, offering security assistance, weapons, and economic deals with fewer strings attached than those demanded by the West. In return, Russia gains influence and access to critical African resources. Traore's anti-Western rhetoric is bold and unapologetic. He has blamed foreign interference, particularly from France and the EU, for fostering instability and holding back African nations. His stance resonates with populations frustrated by poverty, insecurity, and corruption. The message is clear: Africa can no longer be controlled from the outside. For the West, this shift is deeply troubling. The US and France view Traore's alliance with Putin as a strategic threat, one that could redraw alliances across the continent. As Russian influence spreads, the West faces a crisis of relevance in Africa. With Traore at the forefront, a new geopolitical order is taking shape, one that no longer sees the West as the center of gravity. Putin's master plan, building alliances in Africa. Putin's ambitions in Africa stretch far beyond backing charismatic leaders like Ibrahim Traore. What's unfolding is a calculated continent-wide strategy to anchor Russia as a dominant geopolitical force, especially as Western power structures unravel across Africa. For the Kremlin, Africa isn't just a diplomatic opportunity, it's a battlefield for global influence, where economic deals, military pacts, and ideological shifts are all being leveraged to box out the West. At the heart of this strategy is the Wagner Group, Russia's shadow army that operates without flags but with full Kremlin support. Wagner mercenaries have been deployed across the continent, particularly in nations grappling with insecurity and weak governance. In Mali and the Central African Republic, Wagner fighters have taken over roles once filled by French or UN troops, providing not only muscle, but also securing key infrastructure and mining operations. In return, Russia is granted lucrative access to Africa's natural riches, gold, diamonds, and rare earth minerals, all crucial for bypassing sanctions and funding Putin's long-term vision. Burkina Faso under Traore is now firmly in that orbit. The country is becoming another key node in Russia's expanding African network. Traore, with his anti-French rhetoric and emphasis on national sovereignty, is echoing Putin's narrative that Africa must shed its colonial chains and reject Western interference. Moscow sweetens the deal by offering weapons, energy support, and promises of partnership on equal footing, something many African leaders say the West has failed to deliver. This partnership isn't just transactional, it's strategic. African nations like Burkina Faso, in aligning with Russia, provide Putin diplomatic support in global forums like the United Nations. In return, Russia amplifies their voices on the world stage. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement that's quickly becoming the new norm, and the West is struggling to keep up. The West's dilemma: from frustration to panic. The West's response to Traore's rise and Putin's growing influence in Africa is one of increasing panic and frustration. For years, Western powers, especially France, have seen Africa as part of their sphere of influence, both economically and strategically. However, the rise of military coups, anti-Western sentiment, and the pivot toward Russia has caught the West off guard. Western nations have attempted to counteract Russia's influence by offering military aid, humanitarian support, and diplomatic pressure on African governments to stand firm against Putin's machinations. Yet, despite these efforts, Russia's appeal to many African nations remains strong. In the eyes of African leaders like Traore, Russia offers an alternative to the West's colonial legacy, one that promises respect for sovereignty and tangible support for military and economic development. France, in particular, has been on the back foot, with its influence in West Africa rapidly eroding. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have all seen military coups in recent years, and in each instance, the new leadership has been keen to distance itself from France and the European Union. This has led to a growing realization among Western powers that their traditional methods of influence, military intervention, economic aid, and diplomatic pressure are no longer enough to secure loyalty from African nations. The panic in Western capitals is palpable. As Russia's presence grows stronger across Africa, Western nations fear that their influence is slipping through their fingers. This isn't just a matter of losing geopolitical ground, it's about the future of global power dynamics. If Africa continues to tilt toward Russia, it could change the global order in ways that are deeply concerning for the West. The economic and military implications: Africa as a new battleground. The strategic importance of Africa cannot be overstated. The continent is rich in natural resources, including oil, gold, diamonds, and rare earth minerals, all of which are critical to the global economy. For Russia, gaining access to these resources and establishing strong partnerships with African nations is a key part of its long-term economic and military strategy. Putin is already positioning Russia as an essential partner for African countries, offering military support in exchange for access to these resources. As African nations increasingly turn to Russia for arms and military expertise, the West finds itself on the defensive. The US and its allies have been attempting to counteract Russia's influence by ramping up military aid to pro-Western governments, but these efforts have largely fallen short. Burkina Faso's pivot towards Russia is just the beginning. If Traore's vision of a Russia-aligned Africa takes hold, it could dramatically shift the continent's military landscape. Russian mercenaries and military advisors are already in place across the continent, and Putin's willingness to provide military support without the strings attached by Western powers is proving to be a major selling point for African leaders. Moreover, Africa's growing ties with Russia have significant economic implications. As African nations sign more trade deals with Russia, they are simultaneously distancing themselves from Western institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. This shift threatens to undermine the financial dominance of the West as more African nations seek alternative sources of development assistance and economic partnership. The global repercussions: a new Cold War? The power shift unfolding in Africa isn't just a regional shakeup, it's a global recalibration. As Russia strengthens its grip on African nations, it's not merely outmaneuvering the West in a single theater. It's challenging the very structure of global power. Africa has become the newest front in an ideological and strategic contest reminiscent of the Cold War, but with new players, new tools, and far higher stakes. Vladimir Putin's aggressive courtship of African leaders is more than just diplomacy. It's a full-scale campaign to redraw the global map of influence. He's leveraging security assistance, economic partnerships, and political backing to secure long-term footholds across the continent. In return, Russia gains access to valuable resources and support in international institutions, chipping away at Western influence one bilateral deal at a time. Meanwhile, the US and Europe appear flat-footed. Focused on Ukraine, China, and internal challenges, the West has underestimated just how quickly and effectively Russia is filling the vacuum in Africa. If this trend continues, it's not hard to imagine a near future where critical regions and resources, from energy to minerals, are firmly under the control of Moscow-aligned regimes. This isn't a matter of mere influence, it's a global power struggle with high-stakes implications. If Africa becomes a bloc sympathetic to Russian interests, it could tilt diplomatic votes, disrupt supply chains, and rewire global alliances. The West must either recognize this new Cold War dynamic and act accordingly, or risk becoming a spectator in the very game it once dominated. The West must adapt or face irrelevance. The rise of Ibrahim Traore and the expanding influence of Russia in Africa are clear indicators that the West's grip on global power is slipping. The growing alliances between Russia and African nations are shifting the geopolitical landscape in ways that the West cannot afford to ignore. As Africa becomes a new front in the battle for global influence, Western powers must reconsider their approach to the continent. If they fail to do so, they risk becoming irrelevant in a world where Russia and its allies call the shots. The West must adapt to this new reality or face the consequences of being left behind. As the dust settles on yet another closed-door meeting between Moscow and Ouagadougou, one thing is becoming crystal clear. The world we once knew is changing, and the West is no longer in control. Ibrahim Traore isn't just a military leader. He's become a symbol of defiance against neo-colonial influence, a rallying figure for African autonomy, and now a strategic partner in a much larger chess game, one led by Vladimir Putin. This master plan, it's about more than alliances. It's about weaponizing energy, securing critical resources, realigning military powers, and flipping the script on decades of Western dominance. And while mainstream headlines focus on elections and scandals, these underground moves are setting the stage for a dramatic global power shift. The West knows it. That's why they're panicking. But here's the question. Will this new axis of power succeed in reshaping the geopolitical map? Or will it trigger a confrontation the world isn't ready for? Let us know what you think in the comments. Is this partnership the rise of true multipolarity, or a dangerous path toward escalation? If you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more fearless analysis, and turn on notifications. Because the next chapter of this global realignment is unfolding fast, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Until then, stay sharp, stay informed, and stay ready.